I just made cold process soap that is dangerous, and it was all accidental. I was attempting to make a refreshing watermelon soap in time for those warm summer days, and despite making probably my favorite design ever, things went wrong, and I cannot sell it because it now has the potential to hurt people. I think I know why, but first, let's make it. For my watermelon soap, I want to do a classic design with a twist, so this will be a layered soap with a two-toned foresty green bottom, a layer of pure white on top of that, and then the rest will be a juicy watermelon pink with poppy seeds thrown in for visual effect. Now, here's the twist. I'm going to sculpt the top so it looks like someone claimed it with their teeth. For final touches, I'm going to sprinkle some fiery, warm-toned glitter on top to represent the divisive trend of sprinkling chili powder on your watermelon before eating it.
Of course, some tahini. That is how your watermelon should look.
More on that later. I'm also going to split the soap into 2 batches so I can get those layers as straight as possible. With the plan out of the way, let's get our colors. Our color palette today is pleasantly simple, just an 1/8 teaspoon of titanium dioxide for the white layer, a 1/4 teaspoon jungle green to make the darker green tone, and then another 1/8 teaspoon of jungle green plus a 1/16 teaspoon neon bright green will make the lighter green tone. Coho Shimmer Mica will make up a majority of that delicious watermelon pink, just a teaspoon of that, as well as a 1/4 teaspoon neon magical magenta to saturate it. I drizzle some of my oil blend into those mica so I can get them dispersed, and I use my swirly twirly to blendify. My watermelon pink was a little too Clifford forward, so I added an extra 1/8 teaspoon of neon magical magenta to bring in some of that pink. With our colors prepped, it's time to make soap. Now, if you're a soap maker, you'll probably catch my errors before I mention them, and I commend you for that. If you're not a soap maker, it'll be pretty obvious anyway. A carefully measured 45 grams of Skin Edie liquid goes into my carefully measured 105 grams of Skin Slimy liquid, and I bring them to malicious milk consistency, which, if you're new here, is the closest to freshly emulsified as I can get. The consistency should be similar to milk. Using the swirly twirly, which is actually a milk frother in disguise, is convenient, but because it's far less powerful, it takes more time to bring batter to trace, and it also may not emulsify batter completely. Just hint, hint. I separate 60 grams into each of the grains, realizing halfway through that these teensy little cupcake molds would underperform in the volume department, which meant I had to transfer the lighter green into a more voluminous vessel. I get that darker green mixed up, and then it's time to add the fragrance. The fragrance I'm using is Watermelon Sorbet from Wholesale Supplies Plus, and after smelling this, you can't actually see because it's off camera, I turned into the watermelon boy from those Gusher commercials.
Heavy, man!
This fragrance is the fakest, most artificial, delicious watermelon smell you can think of, and I'm living for it. It lives rent-free in your nostrils for months. I'm adding 3.5 milliliters to each of the greens to make them all nice and watermelony. Blending them further, the fragrance is performing really well. No discoloration, very slight acceleration. I've had good luck with my last few fragrances, so eventually something had to ruin my soap. Was it the fragrance? Once those greens reach an appropriate level of creaminess, I pour one into the other so I can get a lightly swirled pattern, and then pour that soap batter into my 1/4 batch mold. Just a throwaway comment, my soap batter is a good consistency. It's not too thin, so it should be properly emulsified. The only contradiction to that idea is the graininess of the leftover batter. It shouldn't look like that, but onwards. I settle those greens with a magnitude 1 earthquake and then realized there's a bug in my programming because I was supposed to reserve some of that batter for the white layer. So off screen I did some quick math and measured out a mini 30-gram batch of oils and lye water to blend into the white. I added 2 mils of fragrance and then blendified until nice and uniform. Now, after blending for a full minute, which is longer than usual for an atomic-sized batch, I realized something was awry with this white. That graininess returned for the sequel, and it looks even worse this time. I'm very confused. Ooh, this is like an Agatha Christie book. There's so many mysteries. Moving on, I'm blending my remaining Skin Edie liquid with the remaining Skin Slimy liquid to make the meat of my watermelon soap. That gorgeous watermelon pink color gets mixed in, and call me a carpenter because I nailed it. I wanted to strike the right balance of realistic, perfectly ripe, syrupy watermelon with the whimsical, albeit unrealistic hot pink that is commonly portrayed in cartoons, so I'm patting myself on the shoulder right now. Can you hear it? 26 grams of fragrance goes into that, and I blend it just thick enough for it to suspend the poppy seeds I'm about to throw in. Now, poppy seeds are like the OG addition to watermelon soaps to resemble those annoying black watermelon seeds, and at first I wasn't a stan because 1, most watermelons you buy from the store are seedless, and 2, poppy seeds aren't big enough. They're just sort of like little bug parts floating around in the soap. They're kind of weird. I get the appeal now. I just had to teach myself that not everything has to be literal. That watermelon sorbet goodness gets layered on top of the white. What's extremely strange is that the white layer is like totally set up at this point. So despite being all grainy and weird, it's undergoing saponification. Super weird. Another magnitude 1 earthquake settles those hills, and I get to show you the nice little teeth mark cardboard cutout I designed.
No, this is not modeled after my teeth.
I've let that soapy watermelon sorbet reach poison pudding consistency, and I run those Washington dentures back and forth to excavate the soap in the shape of my design. This is a bit of a tedious process because I have to scoop out the excess soap while keeping the design consistent without getting any soap batter on the other part of the soap, which is beautifully flat. At this point in time, the soap really does look like watermelon sorbet, with like little fruit flies in it. It actually looks really appetizing, minus the fruit flies. Fall vibes from the good glitter will be glitter the uneaten portion of the soap, and I chose fall vibes because it's the one glitter I have that most resembles a blend of curry spices. I've only eaten watermelon with chili powder once, 10 years ago, because it was what was trending on Vine and YouTube back in the day. I only tried it once because it was so meh. It was like if you drank from a glass that didn't quite get cleaned in the dishwasher and you realize 4 gulps in that there are floaties dancing around in it. It was so watery, and then the powder like instantly turns into a paste on your tongue. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should try it again, but for now, chili powder should stay in its lane. That watermelon sorbet of soapiness gets a nice spritzing of rubbing alcohol to scare the ash away, and then it goes into the closet to sleep and saponify. 48 hours later, I peeked at the soap to see how it was doing, and it literally melted. It looks like oil is weeping out of the green and white layers. Nothing is coming out of the pink, which is bizarre. It also looks like the soap might have fully gelled. It looks slightly translucent, and if you look at the top of it, you see how it's sort of like ripply and shiny? That's exactly how it looks when I've purposefully gelled soap in the oven. Removing it from the mold, you can sort of see the pool of mystery liquid it leaves behind. This is a first. So why is my soap leaking, and will I be able to sell it? Well, I'm not a chemist, so I cannot tell with 100% certainty what happened, but let's look back and take note of all 7 clues I found. First, I added a lot of my oil blend to the green and white colorants for the respective layers, which could have potentially made the super fat, maybe even by a factor of 300%. Second, I soaped at 35 degrees Celsius, which is ideal for controlling acceleration, but not ideal for recipes containing hard oils or butters like mine does, which can solidify and cause false trace or graininess. Third, I was using a milk frother rather than a stick blender to emulsify my batter, which means it could have been underblended. However, I've used the milk frother many times before at the same temperature for around the same length of blending time with no problem. Fourth, I noticed the graininess after I added the fragrance oil, so it's perfectly possible that the fragrance is somehow breaking the emulsion and causing the oils and lye water to separate. But if that's the case, why is my pink watermelon layer perfectly fine? Now, granted, I did blend the pink longer than the other 2 layers, and it was a thicker consistency when I poured, but it still had that mysterious graininess. Fifth, the green and white layers seemed to accelerate quite quickly once they were in the mold, which could be a sign of overheating that was potentially catalyzed by the fragrance oil. At a starting temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, my batter was not warm enough to overheat on its own, and there's no way I overblended it, which is why I think the fragrance would be responsible for that. Sixth, after saponifying, my soap did show signs of gelling, like the bubbly shiny top and translucent appearance. If those green and white layers were overheating, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that they would cause the soap to gel. Seventh, and last clue, the mystery liquid is only seeping from the green and white layers. It's transparent and feels oily, which is why I think it's either unsaponified fragrance oil or batch oil. With all these clues put together, I'm gonna chalk this catastrophe down to undermixing, specifically with the white layer, and here's why. I added my oils and lye to the white oil blend, which was room temperature to begin with. That would have likely lowered the batter temperature below 30 degrees Celsius. On top of that, there was only 30 grams of batter there in a container with a large surface area, which meant it would cool even quicker. My batter started thickening a bit because my solid oils were solidifying, but my milk frother likely isn't powerful enough to emulsify solid oils and lye, so I probably wouldn't have achieved proper trace no matter how long I blended. In addition, I added even more oil to the batter with the fragrance, and since my batter wasn't emulsified, the fragrance might have interfered, making it harder for any unrealistic reacted lye water to bond with the rest of my oils. You can see from this pour how chunky it looks despite being the proper consistency. This is a sign of false trace and underblended batter.
But Chris, how come the green layer was leaking too?
Good question. I think had the greens been left to do their own thing, they would have been fine, because while they looked a tad grainy, the batter looked emulsified. I think that when I layered the white on top, all of that unblended oil sank into those green layers and broke their emulsion. Again, I'm not a chemist, so I can't say that undermixing was the culprit for sure, but I think the evidence is pretty conclusive. The layers are holding their shape at least, so let's cut the soap and evaluate the damage. So despite looking like it's fresh out of the shower, this design is without a doubt one of my favorites. But with all that leakage, will I even be able to sell this soap? While I'm under the impression that this liquid will reabsorb after a week or two, I can't guarantee that it isn't lye water. Because a disproportionate amount of liquid weeped, I don't feel comfortable performing a ZAP test, and I don't have any of the proper pH testing supplies to conclude that the soap is safe to use. For that reason, I will not be selling it because it could be dangerous. With that bummer news out of the way, let's look at the shrink shots. Despite my blunder, this is seriously cute. I love the chomp, I love the chili powder glitter, I think the poppy seed ratio is really good, and all the colors are exactly how I imagined. I mean, I love the juicy watermelon pink, but even the greens. And the smell is absolutely phenomenal. I will definitely be using this watermelon sorbet fragrance again. It smells just like watermelon Jolly Ranchers. I think everything about the soap as a whole works, so of course it had to be the one I can't sell. It's such a cliche design, but I think I found a couple ways to make it unique and pretty. This soap doesn't get a name because printing and cutting out a label just isn't worth my time. Why don't you name it down in the comments below? Maybe if I remake the soap, I'll choose one of your names and send you one. Who knows? That was a soap journey with the Soap Universe. Thank you for watching. Bubble bye.